this is the most important part of the bill. I think we should have a bit more debate on it. I call David Clinton.
Mr Chair, I'm pleased to take a call on this bill, this unfortunate bill that seeks to undermine a system that has worked very well for a very long time. I've had the occasional pleasure and occasional pain of studying and teaching at 3 institutions, at 2 universities and a polytech, and I've observed it firsthand that the student associations have been a fundamental, a touchstone, a really significant base assuring a good experience for students in our tertiary institutions. And this bill will diminish that. This bill undoubtedly will diminish the quality of the student experience in our tertiary institutions. The alleged purpose of this bill to uphold students' rights to freedom of association, it's a fairly dubious proposition, but in seeking to protect students' rights allegedly, what it actually is going to do is reduce the likelihood of students getting a good education, getting a good educational experience while they are enrolled at a tertiary institute. The almost certain unintended consequence, as I've said, is a diminishment, the degradation of that critical experience, a life-forming experience, not only in terms of students, young people and not so young people gaining a tertiary qualification, but gaining experience, refreshing their own attitudes, understanding worldviews. The richness of a tertiary education will be undermined by some of the elements of this if this unfortunate bill is passed. We've heard a great deal this evening about the negative impact on students, and that's entirely appropriate because it will be very real and it will be felt by students. But the institutions equally have cause to be worried if this bill is passed. Clearly the institutions themselves rely on funding to survive and to thrive, and part of that funding is the student achievement component. We know that institutions can lose funding if they do not get sufficient pass rates, if students do not stay engaged and enrolled in courses at which they begin. And there are 8 institutions this year suffering funding cuts because they have failed to meet the standards imposed by the student achievement component of the overall funding of the tertiary sector. Now, there are 3 ways in which we can endeavour to retain students and thereby protect the income of the institutions. Clearly, the academics have a key role in this, ensuring that students remain engaged and remain have a positive experience and a good stay within the sector. Academics who are now struggling with the demands of PBRF, the obligation to research, to publish or perish, even if that research often does not serve any particular practical end. Academics at the same time have been obliged to do more research, are always also experiencing increased teaching loads. Every academic, in my experience, and I talk to a lot of them, is finding increased demands to teach more time in front of students, as well as more expectation of research. Academics are almost also being obliged to undertake administrative tasks because the general staff, the non-academic staff at the institutions, have had the axe taken to them in recent years as well. The whole sector is creaking, it is under stress, and this misguided piece of legislation, with a likelihood that it will diminish the student experience, reduce the likelihood of students staying engaged with their studies, is also likely to lead to the reduction of funding to the institutions. Because after all, who else does that leave? The academics have no capacity to engage with their students at a higher level than they are doing, facing larger classes, more research requirements, more academic expectation. They have no capacity to provide that one-on-one support that does and often does and can make the difference between a student succeeding, completing a degree or a course, or not succeeding. The general staff don't have that capacity either, and we must not forget that general staff are critical in the student experience and do a great deal of often unrewarded and unrecognised work in terms of protecting student interests. So effectively that leaves the students' associations, who have a long history and a very, I dare say, a very proud history of providing the range of services and experience to students that keeps them engaged, increases the likelihood of their success. The Student Associations, Mr Chair.
I call Brendan Burns